everybody, welcome back. I am sure you have realized that my schedule is all messed up. So this was supposed to be last Monday. We're not there. We're just gonna go with it. Yeah, I said I need to get this out before I start talking about next week's topic. So we're in week 18. We're talking about owls. And well, we're talking about birds, right? This is a sort of a bird spin-off, I guess, and we'll be talking about specific birds. This week is the owl. I went with the owl. I was actually going to do that in a few weeks, but I went with the owl because I was on my run the other day and I saw an owl for the first time in my life. And wow, are they majestic. I used to play, if anybody here has ever played The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, or Link's Awakening, there's always this little owl that kind of like leads Link on. And that's because he knows the way and he's this great messenger and he's this sort of wise bird, right? Owls are always symbolic of wisdom. We see that all the time. You know, owls are, now they're kind of sort of like a cutesy thing that you'll see at like for teachers or for educators or whatever. But it's not knowledge. It's wisdom, right? And there's a difference between like knowledge, intelligence, and wisdom. Wisdom is this sort of like sagacious type of a state of being. It's so much more than like you are wise. Like you have wisdom, but you are wise. People are often called old souls, right? If they're wise. So wisdom is a really interesting thing, and it can be a tricky thing to put your finger on, right? So it's why I like owls as a concept to symbolize this wisdom, because really, if you think about an owl, or at least when I saw this owl, right, it just sat on the pole, this very tall, sort of singular pole, and it's just stayed there and it just watched, right? Just watched. And I find that very indicative of wisdom, because owls, yes, they're majestic, but they're also stalwart. They're just kind of like watchers, right? They're the big eyes, watching. And then when I got closer to it, it acted, right? And it's that wisdom is that sort of balance between knowing when to listen and sit and when to act and move and take action, right? There's wisdom in that. There's wisdom in knowing the balance. There's wisdom in knowing when to do right. There's a wisdom. Wisdom is so important. So let's talk a lot about it. Let's talk a lot about it. Wisdom is like a sort of a mesh between being prudent, which is like having discretion, right? Being discreet, holding space for yourself and for others. Wise counsel, right? You will go to somebody who's a judge, who's a wise magistrate, right? Owls are sort of like magistrates where they sit back and they watch and they listen. Well, they don't listen really, but they watch. And then they attack when they need to, right? Judges. Don't get me started. Anyway, I wish the judges that we had now had a bit more prudence, but unfortunately, they don't always. Sorry, that is my bitterness showing. I apologize. Anyway, so wisdom is understanding. It's a knowing. It's a head and heart revelation process, right? And so there's a lot that's so interesting about wisdom, because it's really tough to put your finger on, right? You can't buy wisdom. You can pay for school and get knowledge. You can go to college. You can get indoctrinated there too. Wisdom is like life experience plus a universal understanding, right? It's so much more than just, oh, I know this thing. It's, I understand this because I've lived it And also because like I understand things on a very grand, large scale, right? Now, I know we don't always love taking it to the Bible, especially those of you who maybe aren't Christian or don't believe in the Bible, and that's fine. As you know, I like to do here, the Bible's an old book. Let's treat it as a text. Take out any sort of religious or faith-based conversation. Proverbs 8 tells us all about the nature of wisdom. Actually, Proverbs 8 is wisdom speaking to us. And she is a she, by the way, tells us a lot of really interesting things. I'm not going through all of Proverbs 8, but if you want to, check out Proverbs 8, like Google it up. It'll tell you all about where wisdom is found, what wisdom hates, because like, obviously wisdom is righteousness, it's morality, it's doing the correct thing at the correct time. So it hates things that are evil or crafty. I'm not going to go all into it. It's in Proverbs. But this is what I love, right? It tells us Proverbs 8:22. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. So before even Genesis 1:1, wisdom and God were hanging out. Because God is wisdom. You can't have wisdom without God. Right? So she continues and says, I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, before the earth ever was. Right? And I love that idea because wisdom is ancient. And that is what should come to mind when we think about like sagacious or people who are wise. It's like a level of ancientness, of oldness that transcends our current reality. It transcends what we know, right? Wisdom is this, I don't want to say super spiritual, but it's almost supernatural. When you meet someone who is wise, it's like, you know, you're like, oh, you get it. Like you get it. And usually what you'll find with wise people is they're peaceful, they're calm, right? Like look at Jesus. Jesus is super wise. Why? Well, because Jesus was God. God and wisdom hang out. Obviously, Jesus is going to get that wisdom too. And again, regardless of whether you believe he is or isn't the Messiah, the dude existed. We have genealogical records that showcase that. So he's a thing, right? He's a person. He's existed. So what I'm sort of trying to make the point of, and you can read more in Proverbs 8, but one of the oldest books, the Bible, right, references wisdom as one of the oldest characteristics, right? Wisdom can be attained by everybody, but it won't be. Why? Because what do you need to do to be wise? Slow down. That's the first thing. You got to slow down. That's hard. Some people can't do it. Then what do you have to do? Be understanding. Right? You have to understand things. You have to know you don't know things. You have to know you don't know everything. You can't. Who could? Wise people know when to listen, when to act, when to say, I don't know the answer to this, so I'm just going to sit back and wait, versus when to say, I actually have come across this in my journey, let me tell you about it. Do whatever you want with it. Wisdom doesn't force its will on anybody. It doesn't have to. It's wise. Right? And I love this idea of wisdom and the owl, especially because I just saw one and they are really awe-inspiring. Like their wingspan and their colors, and they're really, really majestic. Wisdom is like that. It's so refreshing when you meet somebody who is wise, genuinely wise, not wise in the ways of the world, right? That's not cute. It's not a good look. Because as wisdom tells us in Proverbs 8, wisdom is better than rubies. It's better than riches. It helps kings rule. If you have wisdom, you will get riches. If you have riches, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll get wisdom. Right? Wisdom has to come first. The life lessons have to come first. the learning and the knowing and the understanding and the looking at things on a big picture. Coming up higher, right? You think about owls. They're always up perched high. They're not chilling on the ground unless they're like zooming in to get something and then they go back up. This owl that I was looking at, I caught a video of it. It wasn't great. The video is not great, but this owl was up real high, just observing. Wisdom observes from on high, not in a place of judgment or condemnation, in a place of like, let me understand what's going on here before I do anything. So as always, I'm going to ask you, how wise are you? Right? How much do you sit and listen? How much do you pause and wait? How much do you observe and just look out and just consider before you speak? You know, I've said this before and I will say this again. The emptiest can makes the loudest noise, right? Wisdom's the opposite of that. Wisdom speaks when it feels good and ready to speak. Speaks when it knows exactly what needs to be said. And it doesn't speak when nothing needs to be said or added to that moment. So it's a fine line. It's a fine line between knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Knowing when you should offer your insight. Right? Because that's wisdom too. It's not about advice. It's not about how much I know. It's about, here's my insight. Here's my perspective. Do with it what you will. Right? Wise people offer insight. They don't offer critique, condemnation, judgment. They don't offer advice, solicited or unsolicited. They're just like, this is my insight. This is my perspective. This is my prerogative on the situation at hand. It's your ship to sail. Do whatever you want. It's your life. This is what I've come with in my journey, right? Wisdom doesn't speak on what it doesn't know. You'll find there are many an empty can out there speaking out of their ego, their egotistical place, where they're talking about things they don't know about. Unwise people try to sort of seem like they know things when they don't. They're not comfortable saying, oh, actually, I don't know the answer to that. You've met people like that, I'm sure. People who have to have the answers. They have to know it all. They have to say, oh, I know this thing, or, you know, not even necessarily like one-upping, just like, oh, yeah, I know that. Oh, I know that. It's not wise. Because wisdom, even when it knows, it doesn't always share. Sometimes, yeah, I do know the answer, right? Wisdom, not me. Wisdom knows the answer, yeah, sometimes, but it doesn't necessarily mean it gives out the answer. Because I've said this before, I talked about this in week 16 when we talked about apples and knowledge. There's a burden that comes with knowledge. There's a responsibility that comes with knowledge. Wise people know they cannot put that knowledge, that wisdom, that insight onto just anybody, right? What I think, for me, I've taken a whole bunch of MBTIs, right? The Myers-Briggs test inventory, I think it is. It's personality tests. And I almost always get what is like the advocate. There's like very few people, apparently, it says, like, are the advocate. And they're trying to like help people on a grand scale. And then when I take my archetype test, it's always the sage that I get, because I'm always seeking wisdom. I'm always seeking understanding. I'm always trying to understand from someone's perspective. Wisdom does that. Now, am I saying I'm wise? No, I'm saying I look for wisdom and I hope to gain it. And I hope I act in accordance with it. But what wisdom does not do is try to say, I'm right, you're wrong. No, that's not wise. That's judgment. Right? Wisdom is like, okay, that's one way to do it. I don't know that it's the most effective way. You do it that way if you want to. What I have found in my journey is that this way is far more effective and self-serving. But again, you do whatever you want. and we'll see what happens, right? So wisdom is letting people make their own decisions. Wisdom is letting people decide. But for me, for good or for ill, honestly, because it depends on who you ask, but I value wisdom almost over anything else. And that includes love, which is probably maybe not the best thing, because love is a super, super powerful force. And God is love, right? So God's been with wisdom, but he is love. So maybe I need to value love more, you know. But wisdom is such a cool concept. And I find that we don't value it as much now because we don't see it as much now. We don't get a whole bunch of wise people. We don't have a lot of Mother Teresas walking around. Not really. You know, we have a lot of corrupted people. We have a lot of egotistical people. We have a lot of power-hungry, prideful people. That's the opposite of wisdom. Wisdom is quiet. It's a sentinel. It's stalwart. You know, wisdom is discreet, like I said before, and prudent. So it's not loud. It's quiet. So you probably, you don't always see it. And it has nothing to do with age, by the by, because age is just a number. You can have a cranky, not wise 80-year-old. You can have a cranky, not wise 5-year-old. You can have a very sagacious, very wise, mage-like, magistrate-like 80-year-old who has seen things and does not pass judgment and is just very apt to give insight when insight is due. But you also can get wisdom from a 5-year-old who just sits back and thinks on things and then says it as they think it, right? Wisdom is not age specific. It is beyond age. It is for all ages, for all time. It is from everlasting. So it's always been. It will always be. And it manifests and it shows up in those who are open, who are not judgmental, who are willing to share their insight and experience in a safe, loving, not judgmental, very prudent, very discreet way. Not a right, wrong way. Children do that all the time. They just kind of say it as they think it is. And there's some wisdom. There's real wisdom in that. There's a Bible quote, it's like, out of the mouth of babes, the truth comes, right? Like, we see that all the time. Kids say things that are much more logical before they're programmed by society, a lot of times than like people my age, 30s, 50s. So wisdom has nothing to do with age, though sometimes older people do have more of it, not necessarily. Wisdom does have a lot to do with experience, but also sometimes there's wisdom in innocence too, right? Wisdom is this, it is just so multifaceted, and it is just so much higher than so many different characteristics. And you can tell that. When you talk to somebody who is wise, you can tell. You're like, wow, I literally learn so much from this person when they talk, right? Like, it doesn't matter what they're talking about. I just love to listen because they know something. They have something. The thing they have is wisdom. We love that. You know, we seek truth. Wisdom is truth. Right? Truth vibrates on a higher level, on a different frequency. Wisdom and truth are one and the same. So when you hear that truth, when you hear that wisdom, we crave it as human and spiritual beings. We crave that. And it's because we're not at a loss for it, but it's few and far between in this age. So, owls. When you look at an owl, when you see an owl, when you watch an owl video, when you think about owls, it's going to always be wisdom. And you can watch how owls act and really get the understanding of wisdom. They sit back, they watch, they wait. They're just like stalwart little beings, little presence, and they're knowledgeable. I mean, you know, as far as a bird can be, they're smart. Owls. And if you've never seen one, they really are majestic. Like, I was shook when I saw it. I was like, is that an owl? Oh my God. I'm seeing so many birds here. so many birds. Anyway, so I hope that is interesting to you, talking about wisdom. This is what, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We're almost at the end of season 2. And then I'm going to take a break from content and really focus on my clients, and really open more spots, because right now I only have a few open. So I'm going to finish out season 2, and then I'm going to put a pause on content and then move into more one-on-one coaching. But I hope that this is interesting to you. I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you learn something. And I will see you not next week. I'll see you in 2 days because it's Saturday here in North Carolina. And again, I apologize for that. I'm going to get back to my consistency very soon. It's just been a total upending and trying to find an apartment. And right now, just living out of a room, and things have been crazy. But we'll get back on track. No excuse, right? Get back on track. And I will see you soon talking about our next bird, which is going to be the cardinal. Love a cardinal. I don't know if you notice, I'm picking all my favorite birds. Symbolic, yes, but also my favorite ones. I love owls. I love cardinals. So since I'm the one, orating, I guess I get to pick the topics. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.